This week's game is Dead Space. Dead Space is a game made in 2008 for the PC, Xbox 360, and PS3. Systems engineer Isaac Clarke joins a team to check on the mining vessel, the USG Ishimura. We're in the distant future. We're fucking space traveling with fucking spaceships, and it's also like a dystopian capitalist planet mining shit. But what matters to Isaac is his girlfriend Nicole is on the ship. The ship has been overrun by Cronenberg-esque monsters called necromorphs. Fortunately, Isaac has the best fucking tool to take them down. A plasma cutter that can cut off their limbs. His job is to save Nicole, get off the ship, figure out the mysterious details of the marker, survive, and make us whole. So Murph, what did you think of this game?
So this is my first time playing this, again, because never had a PS3, never had an Xbox 360, generation passed over me. But I know of Dead Space because it was featured at like one of the very first E3s I watched. And the whole notion of strategic dismemberment, as they called it, was very intriguing to me. It's kind of one of those, like, and then it became super duper famous with like 2 sequels and a movie and a comic book series and what have you. And then like the whole tragedy of Remedy getting screwed over by EA. So like I kind of went into this with very high expectations, and I walked out being like, it was okay.
Yeah, that's fair. In contrast to, you only played this like last year, Resident Evil 4. What did you think of the original Resident Evil 4 in this context?
I like original Resident Evil 4 more than original Dead Space. I think original Resident Evil 4 is I like the story more. Well, not necessarily. I don't think the story's better, but I just kind of glom onto the characters more.
I guess we'll get to the actual plot in a bit, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's like comparing, like, oh, do you like, fucking, I don't know, Godzilla 1954 versus Godzilla 2000. And it's like,
I don't know.
Those are two very different tones,
Yeah, because, okay, I guess we'll get into it. We'll ignore the Resident Evil 4 bit. And my point was, and you could guess, was like, Dead Space in gameplay plays like Resident Evil 4 meets System Shock a little bit, and then meets Half-Life. It's like, that's it. That's the bread and butter. And then it's Cronenberg monsters, and then a plasma rifle. We'll get over all that. But like for the plot, this is a silent protagonist.
Yes.
And then you have a couple NPCs that talk to you and tell you what you need to do for a side quest. Each section is segmented into a specific mission where you go to a specific part of the ship and you have to do something. It's like, oh my God, Isaac, the fucking toilet in Sector Z is broken. You have to fix the toilet before we can activate the pods.
Yeah.
And then you have to go fix the toilet.
Yeah. It's a whole lot of go there, do this. And, they kind of work it into very logical ways. Like, the asteroid defense system is down, so the asteroids are chewing up the ship, which you kind of need because it's so far your only way out. And stuff like that.
It's hard to talk about. This is a difficult game to talk about.
It's just, there's kind of a few different avenues I want to go down. Let's start. Okay, here's my main question. How shooty do the sequels get?
How what?
Shooty. How action shooter do they get?
I would say by Dead Space 3 there's no other way to say this other than, Dead Space 3 kind of took a page from Resident Evil 5. It goes heavy into co-op play. Let's say you have your own Sheva. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, because the thing I always heard about with Dead Space 3 is like those monsters at EA killed this atmospheric, tense, slow survival horror. And then playing this the first time, I'm like, this
is an action game.
Yeah, by hour 2, most of your encounters with the necromorphs are in horde mode,
Yes. I would say that Dead Space 2 goes a long way for horror. A lot of that is due to mood. A lot of that is due to extra aesthetic efforts. And then also Isaac can talk in Dead Space 2.
Mhm.
So they lean more into Isaac going crazy and having his own like thing going on. So by that point in time, they have much more of an identity to it. Here, because Isaac can't talk, a lot of the we're gonna go ahead and say spoiler time. A lot of like the going insane stuff doesn't play out in this very well.
Yeah, so I knew Nicole is dead going in, because that's like a famous video game Easter egg. If you save
Yes.
at the start of each chapter in a new slot, the first letter of each chapter spells out Nicole is dead.
So you knew the twist.
Yes, I didn't know the stuff with like the Unitology cult and getting betrayed by one of your co-pilots and stuff like that. All I knew is that whenever Nicole showed up, she was a hallucination. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't really
Yeah.
know. I feel like I would have figured that out.
I think at a certain point in time it signposts it, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, why is she popping up saying "make us whole again"? You know?
There's times where it's like completely inappropriate and you're like, oh god. You know what I mean? Like there's times where it's very clear that he's going insane or there's something weird going on. But in like other games, there's characterization to either the main character or does something much more effective to the player. Like you know what's this is going to be a super dumb example, but Arkham Asylum. You know, when Scarecrow gives you the fucking fear gas and you're going crazy, it's clear what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you should be as unsubtle as that, but because there's no feedback from Isaac, there's very little like connection between what's real and what's fake in a bad way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like I think there is something to be said by having him be silent. It does create this very like it adds to the atmosphere in a way of you just kind of being left alone with your thoughts, and it kind of sells this idea of like Isaac being this somewhat man of few words, quietly dealing with the carnage. You know,
Did you read any of the stuff in the menus?
like the lore logs or
not just the lore logs, but the mission stuff.
Yeah, the mission.
Like where I need to go next. Okay, so an interesting thing about the gameplay, I should say this now just so we get it out of the way, is there's like a button you can press on your stick that shows you where you need to go. I actually really liked that. That was super effective.
Yes.
Thank fucking God. I wish every fucking game had that.
Yes.
And I also like the HUD. I'll just get that out of the way now too. Is the health bar and the stasis bar are just on your character. There is an immersion to that where it's like not a fucking meter on your normal screen. It's on your character. That's really cool. Yada, yada, yada. But what I was trying to say was I just lost it because I had to talk about those. Fuck, what was I just talking about?
The chapter, just Isaac writing down in his journal.
Oh, yes. Okay, so the one thing that characterizes Isaac is when you read some of the stuff, especially the guide stuff, if you ignore the line and you just do the game normally and you're like, where the fuck do I go? If you load up the menu and you look into the quest logs, Isaac writes stuff down. This is one of those moments where you can see him talk about things. So he does say things, like he talks about knowing the crew of the Ishimura. He knows a lot more of the crew of the Ishimura than just Nicole. So when he sees them, he's like, oh my God, I just killed fucking so-and-so. I feel fucking terrified. This is crazy.
Okay. No, I didn't see any of that.
Yes. So like there's moments like that where he's like responding to, oh, I need to do this, or like, you know, I don't trust this. So those characterization moments exist, but they're buried under an irrelevant mechanic because you don't ever need to look at what you need to do because there's a button that tells you where to go.
Yeah. Because I think it goes back. We had a variety minute. I believe it was the Half-Life episode where we talked about silent protagonists. And
yes.
one of the games we talked about that I think kind of compares to Dead Space is BioShock. Would BioShock benefit if Jack could speak and react to things? And I watched a lot of footage from the Dead Space remake where Isaac does talk. He's played by the actor that plays him in 2 and 3, correct?
Yes.
And the thing I noticed is that, because when I was thinking about BioShock with a voice protagonist, I was thinking a lot of the protagonists talking to themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not what they do in the remake. It's just
He's talking to people.
Yeah, two people. There's not like stuff where he's like, I can use stasis on that door to slow it down. You know, stuff like very generic, like open world protagonist stuff.
But I think that's cool. I really wish we played the remakes for this. Aridin played the remake. He liked it apparently. But that being said, the thing I like is because this version has just people talking to you. Isaac, you need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just talking heads at you. I wish you could talk back to them. Or, like, as we've been talking about with the madness thing, when it gets to the Nicole stuff, Nicole has conversations with Isaac about, his family and unitology, which is this old, like, overarching issue in the series. So that fleshes out more,
Yeah, and I saw they do... I what I've seen of the remake, I like the expansions they've done to it, like giving Isaac a completely different expanded backstory with his mother was in the church and she did a murder-suicide on his father and stuff like that, and how he met Nicole is different, and even the twist with like how Nicole is revealed as a hallucination is done differently. Because they expand the roles of some Ishimura crew that you only find in voice logs in the original.
Yeah. What route do you want to go now? There's still so many.
So, okay, staying with the story elements. What I like about this game is it kind of does one of my favorite horror movie tropes, where there's like two different horror movies going on. Or, like,
yes.
it's a movie that's walked into another movie. Like, this space zombie plot interrupted a, like, space cult plot actively in progress.
Yes.
And that's really cool. Like, if it had just been about the necromorphs, I think the game would have felt very generic, very interesting enemy design, and combat design.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been that interesting narratively.
They could have just done a Half-Life where it's like, oh, creatures from another dimension.
Yes, exactly. But adding in the cult aspect and the psychological horror aspect with like the creepy whispers and everything. Like, am I crazy, or does the merchant robot repeatedly say "kill yourself"?
I think he does. I don't know if it's like a glitch or what, but I think that's intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there's like scares. Sometimes you'll go to the shop and then there's like a necromorph that pops out. Those are the moments that worked most for me. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Mm-hmm. But it's like the actual necromorphs kind of lost their punch after a while, especially once you get good at killing them, like any horror scenario.
Well, it doesn't help that you have okay, so what's weird is a little dabble into gameplay real quick. You've got stasis, which is broken as fuck.
I did not know that was an element of this series. I did not know that you had psychokinesis and time dilation powers.
I know, and then then you have fucking telekinesis. You can shoot shit from your fucking hands or whatever, and that's really useful. And then you have a bunch of weapons, and admittedly, the issue there is the only weapon that is like super useful is the plasma cutter.
Yes.
You could use the other weapons, and they're fine, they're alright. But
the moment
9 times out of 10.
The moment you pick them up, their ammo starts spawning. It's not like Resident Evil, where they'll give you ammo for weapons you don't have. If you only use the plasma cutter, you will only ever pick up plasma cutter ammo.
Yeah. And that's all you need. Literally all you need is the plasma cutter.
Yeah, genuinely.
Like,
I felt like a chump getting, like, the plasma rifle. Because I was like, oh,
dude, that fucking machine gun thing is kind of garbage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they even say, like, oh, don't use the plasma rifle. That's shit at killing these things. The only one that feels, like, super useful is... it was situationally useful just for getting things done with, is the line launcher.
The flamethrower was okay when it had, like, the small little ones. When there's, like, a small little horde of the tiny thingies, I got mileage out of the flamethrower.
Yeah, I never used the flamethrower. I never used the saw.
Saw's not good.
Yeah, I primarily just did the plasma cutter and the line launcher. And the line launcher mainly to deal with those horrible, like, black necromorphs.
Yeah.
It was weird. Like, that's another thing. It's like, it was weird that when that marine vessel crashes into the ship and they're like, ooh, we're introducing a new enemy type, super fast necromorphs. But they didn't seem all that much faster than the regular ones, because it's not like the existing necromorphs are like Resident Evil 4 villagers where they kind of like slowly creep at you. Like they
were already running at you.
Yeah, they're already running at you. It's like, oh, now they're slightly faster, but it's like I've gotten pretty good at like dead-eyeing a leg from here, you know?
Yeah, you needed dramatically unique monster designs for it to be interesting again. And it doesn't ever hit that point. Like at a certain point in time, the fear goes away. I think though, to defend that, I think that's a natural thing in a combat horror game. I get that feeling in every Resident Evil. Every Resident Evil sort of abandons the horror aspect at least 2/3 in.
Yeah, but I feel like this really
loses it fast.
Yeah, you talked about it, about Uncharted 2 episodes ago. You talked about it with Tucker, where it's like, okay, I'm entering a room full of chest-high walls. I wonder what's going to happen here. And that's kind of how I felt with Dead Space. It's like, oh, I'm entering a really open room. I wonder if the doors are going to close, and it says biohazard present. You know,
I'm about to fucking murder a bunch of things, and my eyes are going to glaze over. I'm going to stop having fun.
And I can't. It's just one of those situations where it's like, you know what? I would have shaved 2, maybe 3 hours off this game and had a much tighter experience. And what's there is already like pretty tight, especially by modern AAA game standards.
And I think this game does go out of its way for variety at points. It just doesn't go for it in the basic gameplay. It'll go for it for unique gimmicks like shooting the asteroids or the zero grav segments or the breathing in space segments. You know, that's all nice.
Yeah,
they're
there
fun.
Is some variety
but
there. I think
it's just not fundamental.
Like the survival horror aspect really bled away once I was halfway through the game. Like I had no fear going into the final stage because I was like, I have so much ammo stockpiled, and maybe that's something that's like
I sold my healing a lot.
No, I did that too. Where I was kind of like, you know, I'm not trying to get gamer cred here, but like I've always like saw a lot of like reviews for this game and retrospectives on this game where people are like, oh, you really need to count your shots because ammo is a scarcity. And it's like, is it? Or are you just bad at aiming and missing your shots?
Especially when you are given like an entire tool to like smash creatures. The melee is okay, especially when you're stomping. And then when you stomp things, you also get ammo from them. And then it's like, oh my god, I'm getting so much ammo. The resources aren't as finite as they should be. Now, admittedly, I didn't play this on hard.
I played this on normal.
I just normally play on normal. Yeah, like I think that is the normal experience. And in that aspect, if I ever played this again, I would play hard.
Like, do you think you should have to play hard in order to get more of a survival horror experience?
A scary experience? No, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. But I don't hate this game either. I think we're being very down on this game. But like, I think one of the things that's important to note is, number one, this is one of those games that was like obviously very huge page off of Resident Evil 4, but there's a lot of innovations and refinement in gameplay from this, like being able to move and aim and just a lot of minor things that gave it a smoother experience. Whereas Resident Evil 4, for founding a genre almost, it is still very close to tank controls. It is as if you just moved the camera in tank controls and it made more sense.
And like, you know, I don't want to be like overly down on this game. Like, okay, the actual design of everything, the production design is super well done. Like the actual look of the necromorphs, when you actually are able to look at like a still one, and you can see like where the necromorph begins and the human bit ends. That's super cool. The actual like Ishimura, how it has this very like satirical capitalist, like, you know, it's the place of the future. Come see our 0G basketball court. But then like everything else is like run down. The cafeteria's crap.
Yep. I dig those. I think it had a lot of personality in that way. And I do like Unitology as a cult. I think that is a cool cult.
I have a little difficulty wrapping my head around the marker is a man-made marker, but we forgot we made it.
that's super deep lore. And Dead Space 2 and onwards, it even goes deeper. I'm not, we won't spoil it, but yeah, no, there's some very confusing bits to it. But even then, I think the religious aspects work for me. And I also wanted to say, I think Isaac as a suit, I think that's a really cool suit design.
It's kind of disappointing when he takes off his helmet and he's just like a potato man.
It's a fucking ugly white guy from fucking 2008.
White. He's like blistered red skin. How do you feel about horror games being well lit? This is another difference I noticed with the remake.
I think, I mean, also this is probably a thing in Resident Evil 4 versus Resident Evil 4 remake. I noticed that difference too. I think lighting is super important to horror and serves to abstract, or, you know, the unseen is what's scary. But also on the other end, you want to be able to clearly
especially in a
everything.
game like this where targeting is so important.
Exactly. Where it's very essential to, you don't want to actually miss any like significant detail. You need to shoot their fucking legs, dog. Like, you need to be able to see their legs.
You know, you don't want to get in, like, early on, I was having some difficulty because I felt like I was like shooting at the thing, but the necromorphs were so herky-jerky that they would like move slightly to the left and my shot would just hit their head, which only pisses them off. And I was like, oh, well, that's a wasted shot then. You know, that if only the hit scan was better. I got better at it as I went through the game, especially with how many necromorphs you have to fight in groups. No, and I don't want to be too down on this game because like it definitely feels like one of those games that's like made to be iconic. You know?
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where it's like in the time. This is, I mean, obviously this is like a fucking AAA game, super big franchise. This is kind of what I would want out of a AAA franchise, just generally, especially when in regards to sci-fi and the gameplay influences. Like, I have very little complaints about the approach. I think it's the details where I'm like, yeah, this isn't landing. It's like a B- for me.
B- is definitely where I'm at. B-, B. Like, if you want to turn that into numbers, it's like a 7 out of 10. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm feeling just a little let down because I always heard, you know, I played through all the Resident Evils and I was like, okay, I guess I can like, and I never thought of myself as really a survival horror guy, but I did that and I'm like, oh, like I kind of want to check out other survival horror games, and Dead Space was at the top of the list.
There's elements of Half-Life 2 that are scarier than this.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would say most of like Ravenswood or Ravenholm, damn it, yes. is much more scarier and has tenser feeling moments.
And also involves you, like, possibly using physics to take out creatures in half, cutting their limbs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think Dead Space is missing a shotgun moment, you know? It's where it's just like, here's the moment where you can really just go to town on things. And it, like, that does happen, but it's in a very kind of lame way where it's like, I have so much ammo and healing that no encounter is a problem, rather than...
You never feel in danger, but you also never feel empowered in, like, a power fantasy way.
Yes, exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, I went into that final boss, and I've just felt kind of very ho-hum about it. Which is, kind of weird to say, because it's this cool setup, like you're fighting this space butt, and this meteor's crashing down. I think it would have worked if it was on a timer. Is it on a timer? Like, is there an invisible timer? Like, if you just sit around, will the meteor eventually crash into the planet?
I doubt it, but I'd have to check.
Yeah, I do want to play the remake because it seems like what they've expanded on for the story makes it a much more fleshed out experience. On the flip side, though, they added side quests, which I really don't think this game needs.
This game is bloated. This game is bloated. I don't want it to bloat more, but that being said, if they found a way to... I noticed that they fixed some of the puzzles, because, like, I guess we should talk about puzzles.
You know where I died the most? Was figuring out what I was supposed to do with that floating bit of rock.
Oh.
I didn't realize you could walk outside.
No, looking at some of the gameplay, they fine-tuned some of the puzzles and streamlined them to make them, like, baby easy. But I don't mind, because they're already easy in, like, a bad way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, what do I do? Oh, that's all I have to do? Oh, okay.
I have to move the cube into the square peg? Or,
Yes, but then you have to telekinetically move it, and then you got to hit it at a right angle, or else it's like going sideways, and you're like, well, fuck.
and then it's like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen when I start the power-up sequence, and this door starts opening slowly.
Yeah, it's
just very telegraphed, I think, is the ultimate. If they had leaned more into the psychological aspect, like, you're fighting, like, some hallucinations or some stuff, I think...
2 does that more. I'm going to go ahead and defend. Dead Space 2, again, leans further into, like, Isaac's going crazy. Because they characterize him more. Like, that does so much work here. Whereas in this one, and I think there is, like, a version of a game where you are a silent protagonist and you're going insane that feels personal deeply, but it doesn't work here. Because this is also an Alien movie.
Yeah, and kind of it feels like a story where it's like, if one dude's not talking, that kind of breaks up the tension of, not necessarily the tension, but the flow of dialogue. It's not a story Alien doesn't work if Ripley doesn't, like, interact with the crew.
Exactly. And this is something to praise Half-Life 2 for. Half-Life 2 has moments where you're like, Gordon should probably talk here, but it never feels, like, inappropriate.
Yeah.
Like, it never feels out of place. Whereas here, it's like, yo, Isaac would say something.
Gordon isn't ultimately not really that much of a character in the plot of Half-Life.
Yes, whereas fucking Isaac has to do everything. It's like, yo, you're the engineer. You're perfect for this. Isaac, go do this.
Yeah, and the twist hinges on Isaac.
Yes, exactly.
My only real, like, true, like, plot criticism of the game is, why the fuck would you open the escape pod?
Oh, when the military, oh my god. I think that's just a horror movie cliche thing.
But they're showing up explicitly to exterminate the crew. So wouldn't they be like, oh yeah, we got an escape pod, we just killed what was ever inside it.
You see, and that's like a moment where it feels like they think of the set pieces and like the horror moments bit by bit by bit instead of actually building the logic of what's happening.
And it's like, on paper, it's a cool setup. It's like, oh, the rescue is coming, and they're like, we got your escape pod you shot out earlier. And like, on theory, you're supposed to be like, oh my god, don't open the pod.
Yes. Like, in the moment you think that, and then afterwards you're like, wait 1 second. That makes no sense. What the fuck?
Also because taking out one necromorph is ultimately pretty easy.
Yeah.
So I feel like a bunch of fully armored dudes with guns should have been able to do it. I digress. Again, it's still a good game.
Yeah.
It's just not what I had built up in my mind.
Let me ask you, did you feel this level? I think when you played Half-Life 2, you're like, I get it. You didn't love it, but you're like, I get it. This game, do you get it?
This game, I definitely get why it became famous. It is such, like, if this was announced today, I would be like intrigued by it,
Did you play Callisto Protocol? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, Callisto Protocol is coming into a world that Dead Space built,
Yes, that makes sense.
So, and like, it's just so different at the time. It's so different now that I am glad it exists.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Half-Life 2 was just like, I had built up this, like, monumental game in my mind.
A goat. And you're like, is it a goat, though? Whereas this one's like, A+. Is it an A+? No.
Yeah. Exactly.
That makes sense.
So, I think we've made enough enemies today.
Yeah, I think we picked a lot of fights. I'm trying to think of other positives to say about this game.
I'm back on the cast. I'm ready to start controversy. I'm ready to start beefs.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. What other beefs are we doing?
You know what? We're starting beefs. Actually, no, we're not, because next episode we're going to be playing a good Zelda game for once.
That's what I'm talking about. I forgot you liked this one.
I know. We are going to Koholint.
Oh my god.
Koholint. Is there even an N? Am I crazy? Is there an N?
Koholint.
Koholint Island, to figure out the mystery of the windfish in Link's Awakening, and I am excited.
I'm excited too. This is like a GOAT 2D Zelda.
It is. I would say it's either the best or Phantom Hourglass is, and those are the only two options.
I need to my actual prep for the episode is going to be dabbling back into the Oracle games, just so I can confidently say it.
Never played the Oracle games.
Yeah, I played them years ago, so I'm like, I should probably brush up. I now am very, I play Link's Awakening. I have the Game & Watch Zelda thing, so I play the black and white version of Link's Awakening all the time. Like, I now know the black and white version by heart. But that being said, our guest of that episode is Will Borger. Old friend of the show that's never been on. Back in the fucking episode 1, he's like, "Oh, I'd love to guest star." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's nice." We fucked up. So long time coming. And then what else do we have?
You know what? We're pumping out more and more content on the YouTube channel all the time. I put up a little 30-minute rapid-fire review of some indie games I had played over my break.
I saw it. It was really good. It's way better than a normal What You Playing.
Yep, that, because it's all me, baby.
Shut up. Anyways.
Yeah, and we're also uploading, the cast to the YouTube channel in, little chunks and stuff.
And we also do it before the release of the main thing, I'm trying to urge people to go. I want you to go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Even if it's something simple to say, like you're wrong about Dead Space, or you're right about Dead Space, comment that on the Earthbound video, just to really confuse.
I want to be the next Mr. Beast, and I want to be able to go to a starving island where there are children looking at me, and I want to be able to hand them 1 million copies of Dead Space, and be like, "Here you go, I'm Mr. Beast."
I went to Africa and gave them all copies of Dead Space?
Imagine that thumbnail, man. That's a good thumbnail. I think we're playing out.
Yeah.